Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Pichard, and I am the Program Relations Manager here at Practice Match. If you're not familiar with Practice Match, we are a nationwide physician job board and career resource center. We help physicians prepare for and conduct their job search. Before I joined Practice Match, I was an in-house physician recruiter. That's not at all what I do now. This is more of an education and mentorship role, but I think it's important to share because I often use examples from my recruitment days in these sessions. Let's dive into contract negotiation. So, today we are going to cover all the steps you need to think about before and as you negotiate your contract. We'll cover market data, compensation models, bonuses, benefits, productivity structures, the appropriate time and way to enter negotiations, problematic areas in contracts, and some advice on lawyers. Before you can negotiate, you need to be able to define your ideal practice and really understand what's important to you and how you prioritize that list. It's important to also know the appropriate time to ask questions and start negotiating. You need to understand market data so you know what a fair offer is. Sometimes managing expectations is important too. I once had a candidate tell me on a phone screen, I want to make a lot of money, but I don't want to work hard. Well, don't we all? But it's important to understand the trade-offs. If you take a lifestyle job, it's likely going to pay less. If you work a lot and see a lot of patients, you're likely going to make more. There's also fair market value. You can't just pick a number that you want to make and expect a hospital to give it to you. Most hospital systems are relying on a data source to understand fair market value. They use that data source to determine what to offer to stay within fair market value. So, step one, define your ideal practice. What is your ideal geographic location? What benefits are important to you? Is your family expanding? Is parental leave important to you? What about your finances? Do you have a ton of student loans that you're concerned about? Do you need a job that offers student loan assistance or qualifies for PSLF? What type of employment do you want? Full time, part time, W 2, independent contractor? What type of institution do you want to work at? A large hospital system or a smaller private practice? What kind of cases do you want to see? And what equipment do you need to do them? What type of work or call schedule do you need? What do you and your family need in a community? What are your deal breakers? So, how do you prioritize this list? Write it down. 50% of physicians leave their first job within 5 years, and I attribute a lot of that to not putting enough thought into your own priorities before you begin your job search. Be sure to take time to really think about this. So, how do you define your ideal practice before you have experience? Experience is going to tell you everything. In 5 years, I promise you'll know exactly what you like and what you don't like. But at this point, you do need to think about it and have an idea from what you've seen in residency. Also, start early. Talk to other physicians that you trust about their experience working in different settings. What worked? What didn't work? Talk to employers at conferences. Don't just run by that recruitment table. Stop and listen for a minute. You don't have to apply, but you can learn a lot by talking to different recruiters and learning how their organizations are set up. Ask as many questions as you can. Attend career fairs. Even before you're serious about your job search, it's networking, and networking early allows you to learn. You may want to consider going ahead and creating a job search email while you're in training. Just a pro tip. This allows you to be in control of when you focus on your search, but you also don't want to miss an email from your dream job because they're contacting you 2 hours after you completed training and you had your training email listed on your CV. So, creating a job search email nice and early, getting that on your CV instead of using your training email is very helpful. Another pro tip, signing early increases your chance of getting a stipend. So maybe consider looking earlier than you actually need to. That way you have a better chance of getting that stipend while you're still in residency. All right, let's talk about market data. So this is where you do your homework and learn what kind of offer you should be getting. Your goal is to be paid at fair market value for your specialty in the location you're applying in. It's important for you to know what fair market value is. The survey data companies that you see here are very large surveys that hospitals use to determine fair market value and for compliance. You'll likely see these surveys referenced in your contract where they say something like, not being able to pay more than the 90th percentile based on MGMA data. So if you know what data source they're using, it's great for you to be able to know what that data says. The hard part is that some of these surveys cost quite a bit of money. You might be able to access them by maybe having your coordinator or a recruiter from your institution reach out to hospital administration to see if they can get access to it. That's a possibility, but there are other sources too. The other thing to know about these data sources is that these surveys can be outdated because they typically come out the following year. And sometimes things change rapidly in the market. They also don't often affect data for microregions. The next resource is crowdsourced data. These resources are free and you can access them. There are several out there, but I provided a few examples here. We have compensation data available at practicematch.com, both through a practice match compensation survey and resolves our data. So resolves our data can be found on our website. They are a contract negotiation company and they serve all specialties in all 50 states, and they have a tool that allows you to put in your specialty and the region that you're looking in to get recent examples of real offers that have been issued there. So that is a great tool. The final and best way to understand the market on a micro level is to have a few different offers in that area so you can compare them and get an idea of how much leverage you have. All right, let's talk a bit about compensation models. So we have straight salary. So this is fixed salary, 100% salary, or straight salary. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a compensation model where physicians are paid a set salary no matter the quality or quantity of their productivity. There is salary plus productivity, which is a more common model. And this model allows physicians to make a set base salary, but also gives them a chance to earn a bonus. The bonus can be based off of different criteria, but it's typically WRVUs, billings, or collections. There's salary plus outcomes. This is similar to the last one, where there's a base salary and a bonus opportunity, but the bonus is typically based on quality metrics and patient satisfaction rather than productivity. And then there is pure productivity. The pure productivity model is payment or allocation of distributable revenue, usually after costs, based on a percentage of billing, collections, or WRVUs. All right, so it's very likely that your contract will include some sort of productivity structure. So it's important to understand how these are calculated so you can make sure you're getting a fair offer. Please note that the median, production threshold, and multipliers are going to change based on the specialty and location. So it will be important to look at the data for your specific situation. But here are some examples. In the first example, you are being offered a base salary of 200,000. Later in the contract, you find a paragraph that says you will make $40, that's the multiplier, per WRVU for anything exceeding 3,000. So then you look at the MGMA data and determine that the median salary is also 200,000. You might think, great, this is fair, and be inclined to move on. But I encourage you to keep going, math it out, make sure you're looking at that production threshold in your contract, and compare it with the median from the data as well as the multiplier. So here, the production median is 25,000. That means you need to produce 500 more WRVUs than average to be eligible to bonus. So if you can negotiate to get that production threshold in your contract changed to 2,500 based on the data, then you will get a $20,000 bonus if you hit that 3,000 WRVUs they originally proposed. Okay? So in the second example, you're being offered 200,000 and the median is 190,000. This appears to be in your favor, but when you continue to evaluate, you see that you're being asked to collect 600,000 when the median is 500,000. That's a $100,000 gap. 30%, the multiplier of 100,000 is 30,000. So when you add back that original 10,000 that you were ahead from your base pay, you're still short 20,000 in bonus if you're required to collect 600,000. So that's worth doing the math and asking for it. It's also a fair ask if you have the data to back up your request. As I said, you can't go in just asking for a number because you want more. You need to have a reasonable explanation for why it's fair and to show that you're bargaining in good faith. All right, let's talk about the job search timeline. I put this in here mostly so you can see all of the steps you need to complete before you start negotiating your contract. This is a snippet from our Practice Match Career Guidebook. By the way, that's free. You can download it on our website. It has a lot of valuable resources in it. But anyway, because it's from that guidebook, of course, it starts with create your practice match profile. Then you have your career search. This is when you are networking, attending career fairs, reading job postings, and getting an idea of the market. Preparing to apply is updating your CV and getting it reviewed, writing a cover letter template. Then you're applying and going through the interview process. The negotiation process doesn't start until way down here after interviewing when you have an offer in hand. Up until that point, your only goal should be getting the offer if you're interested in that job. You can really hurt your candidacy if you show your cards too soon and start asking for things too soon. When I was a recruiter, I once had a candidate call my office about a job posting he saw, and he dove right into questions about the salary, the benefits, and the amount of vacation he would get without asking me any questions about the job or even sending me his CV. He was pretty demanding about the vacation, and said he wouldn't even consider the job before he knew if we were willing to give him 10 weeks of vacation. Now, in talking to him, I realized that he was a strong candidate. He had a fellowship that we desperately needed and had he gone through the interview process and shown the team he was an excellent candidate before diving into negotiating, administration would have likely been willing to give him 10 weeks instead of the 8 he would have already been offered. But since he insisted on having me ask administration about more time off before even sending his CV, his request was denied and he was not invited to interview. When to ask about salary and when to negotiate. So, when you do it is just as important as who you ask. So, here is my tip: try to let the employer lead. Maybe the spewer or the interviewer will spew out the whole package on the phone screen, but they very likely will not. This isn't the time to ask questions. Even if they tell you the standard package, your goal at this part of the process is to learn if the job sounds like a good fit for you and tell the recruiter why you are a good fit for the job. If the phone screen goes well, the recruiter will invite you to the next step, which is typically a virtual interview. Sometimes they will go directly to an in-person interview, but it's very likely it'll be virtual. If you are invited to interview, it is very likely that salary will be discussed. I recommend that once your interview is scheduled, you ask the recruiter, will I learn anything about the compensation package on this interview? And hopefully at this point, they tell you which person on the interview who will discuss it with you. But if not, ask them who to discuss it with. It is bad form to discuss those things with the wrong person. So when you meet with that person, let them lead. They'll likely ask you a few interview questions, and it's good to build some rapport before you dive in. If your time with that person is coming to an end, go ahead and ask if they can share any details about the compensation package while you still have about 10 minutes left with them. It is reasonable to expect to know at least ballpark what an offer would look like before you take the time and make the commitment to go to an in-person interview. So, best case scenario, what they quote you is close to what you're expecting because you have done your homework and you know what fair market value is. You go on the site visit, you love the community, they love you, you get your offer LOI. If at any point what I said is not true, hopefully you've given yourself enough time to respectfully withdraw your candidacy and explore other offers. But let's keep going with best case scenario. You have your LOI now. We'll talk more about the LOI in a moment, but the standard process is you get your LOI, you negotiate the numbers, you sign it, send it back, they issue you the contract, you negotiate the contract, then you sign. The job is not yours until you have a countersigned contract in hand. All right, let's talk about this LOI. So, when an employer sends you a letter of intent, you can be confident that they want to hire you. A letter of intent is a formal job offer and the beginning of negotiating in good faith. If you sign it, it's a promise to bargain in good faith based on the principles outlined in the letter. I say this because I want you to understand that while an LOI is not legally binding, it is very bad form to sign an LOI if you don't intend to take the job. The LOI is an important step within the offer process. It's used by employers to find out if you're serious about the opportunity or if they should move on to other candidates. LOIs are much shorter than the contract, and they're usually formatted in more understandable terms. LOIs do have a shorter expiration date, so that is something you'll want to pay attention to. If you don't sign the LOI within the time frame given, there is a chance that they will offer the job to another candidate. If you have an LOI in hand, but you know you have another interview that you want to explore before you make a decision, it's best to be honest and ask for an extension, but don't let it expire without communicating with the institution. The LOI should at least outline the start date and length of contract, compensation range, expenses that will be covered, benefits, any planned buy-in agreements and bonus structures, and your duties and responsibilities. LOIs are also used as a technique to start the negotiation on more favorable terms for the employer because you essentially are agreeing to terms in writing before you get to see the entirety of the contract. That said, I don't advise looking at an LOI or contract with the thought that they're trying to be unfair. That's really not the case. Healthcare employers spend a lot of money recruiting physicians. Hiring physicians into their vacant roles is a very high priority to them. So they want you to be happy and they want to give you a competitive agreement, so you'll choose them. Your goal as you review and negotiate these documents is to make sure the agreement is fair and reasonable for both parties. In the event that the letter details items that raise concern, it may be best to consult an attorney before signing, especially if the letter comes across as anything other than non-binding, but that is a personal choice. All right, so everything went well, and now you have a contract in front of you. Here are the things that you need to know and think about. Contracts are going to start off being employer friendly. It was written by their lawyers, and it's in their best interest to keep some things vague, such as the call schedule. If your contract says something like call is split evenly or equally among the team, which sounds fair, right? Call split equally among the team. But where does that leave you if someone retires and leaves? You need to be thinking about these things and making sure they are detailed and lined out. So, where does that leave you if someone leaves? Are you then going to take 10 days of call instead of the 5 that they told you you would be taking in the interview? Maybe it's more beneficial for you to have the number of days that you'll be expected to take call in your contract with some language about what happens with your pay rate should you take more. So, that in mind, You really want to make sure the language is clear about your schedule, call, the locations that you'll be required to work at. What if one day they want you to go up to this other location that is 150 miles away? Like, did they tell you about that ahead of time? It's important to know that. Scope of practice. Are there procedures that they want you to do that you don't want to do or aren't in the scope of your specialty? Are they including that DOP somewhere? How are we spelling this out? Are there any administrative duties being tacked on? Is that spelled out? Moonlighting, consulting, blogging. Is it allowed? Do you need consent? Who owns your content? Staffing. What is the plan if someone leaves? Will the hospital employ locums or will you be expected to pick up the burden? Will there be additional compensation if that happens? Equipment, software, support staff, especially if it's a new service line. Do you need this spelled out in your contract? Maybe you don't. But let's just use urology as an example. If you're a urologist and they're telling you that they're buying a new Da Vinci robot in the next year in the interview, and that's something you're excited about, it's really important to you, and that was a big factor in you making the decision to accept this offer. Maybe it is reasonable to ask that that be included in the contract. That way, if they don't come through on that promise because maybe something happened in the budget, things happen, you have a way to terminate the contract without penalty. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's talk about compensation and benefits. Things that you want to know. Is there an income guarantee period? What happens at the end of it? Are you switching to productivity? If so, how is productivity calculated? Is it WRVU? What's the multiplier on that? Is it going to be billings or collections based? Make sure you're asking about the payer mix. If so, that can be important when it comes to collections. What about the other physicians bonusing? Are they hitting the marks? Those are questions you want to ask. Definitely don't need other physicians bonuses in your contract, but definitely things you want to know about. Let's talk a little bit about bonuses. So these are the most common types of bonuses you'll see in a physician contract. Please note, not opportunities will have all of these bonuses. It will be dependent on the market and the location and the specialty that you're applying in. If you're applying in a city everyone wants to live in, it's very likely the employer doesn't need to offer all of these things to recruit physicians. Whereas in a more rural and underserved areas, employers need to offer more incentives to be competitive in the recruitment market. So, a residency or fellowship stipend may be offered if you sign your job early enough, say a year to 18 months in advance. Stipends may be offered but not advertised. So, if you're signing early, this is something you can ask about. Other incentives or bonuses that you might see would be a sign-on bonus, a relocation bonus, student loan repayment, retention bonus if you sign another contract after the initial period. You may also be offered low interest loans to help with purchasing a home or CME days and allowance. Benefits. Benefits may be outlined in a separate document. Make sure that you do review it so you know what you would be getting. That said, health benefits are often included in a group policy for the entire institution with a company like Cigna or Blue Cross Blue Shield, and those are often not going to be negotiable. That said, the benefits you should at least make sure you are reviewing are paid time off, health insurance, medical, dental, vision, prescription, life insurance, disability, long and short term. Important to have. Short term is often used for maternity leave. Parental leave. It's important to understand their policy if you're expanding your family. If there isn't set parental leave, you may be relying on short term disability, and most of the time you're not eligible for that benefit until you've been employed for 1 year. So that's an important thing to think about. Termination. So it's important to understand how the relationship ends. What if you or the employer decide to terminate your contract without cause? This can happen. Maybe you have a family issue that's requiring you to relocate, or maybe your hospital system decides they want to outsource your service line to another company. Things can happen that neither of you planned for, so you need to make sure that you're protected as much as possible. Things that definitely need to be outlined. For termination without cause, what is the procedure and how much notice needs to be given? For termination with cause, is cause defined? Is it too vague? The more clear the language is here, the more beneficial it is for you. What are the costs associated with termination? Do you have tail coverage? Who's paying for that? Sometimes employers will and sometimes they won't, but you should be aware of that up front and understand if it's a cost that you'll need to cover when you terminate your contract. For some specialties, tail coverage can get into six figures. Bonuses. Do you have to pay these back if you leave? Are they going to be prorated based on the time that you fulfilled? What about productivity bonuses? If you leave before the quarter ends, will you still be paid out for the production bonuses you earned during that period? Force majeure clause. What happens if there is an act of God? Like a pandemic. This was a big conversation in 2020 and 2021. Can they terminate you immediately without notice or furlough you? Because if so, that could cause some financial struggle. If you can eliminate these types of clauses or at least get a fair notice included, it's in your favor. Non-competes. It is very standard for some non-compete language to be included in contracts, and I understand why employers do this. They're spending a lot of money to promote you, to help you build your patient base, and if you decide to leave and open your own practice or go work for the hospital down the road, it isn't good for your employer, especially if your patients follow you. So they are trying to protect themselves. That said, you need to protect yourself as well. At some point, your contract is likely to end. So when you sign it, you need to understand if you're going to have to relocate your family or if you'll still be able to work. So here are the things that you need to know about non-competes. They are state specific. Some states have banned them for all industries, and some states have banned them for physicians. So it's good to look at that. And if you're applying in a state that doesn't allow them, you can mention that and ask that it be removed because sometimes they'll still put them in there. If there is an enforceable non-compete, it needs to be reasonable in time and pay attention to the restricted area. So 2 years is a typical time frame on a non-compete. For the restricted area, is it a normal size to protect? This can differ based on if you are applying in a highly populated city versus a more rural setting. A more rural setting is going to protect a bigger area. Also, is the mileage in your non-compete based on one location or all locations in your healthcare system? That's important to know. Try to limit it to one location, if at all possible, to give yourself a little more leeway in your decisions after that contract ends. What about scope of practice? What if you have a full-time position at an inpatient facility? Will the non-compete prevent you from doing work at an outpatient facility? And then, are there any exclusions? What if there's a merger that you don't want to participate in? Can you go work at the competing hospital down the street then if they've let you go? What if they let you go without cause? Does a non-compete still apply? All right, how to negotiate your contract. First, negotiate in good faith. Sometimes I hear physicians talk about the negotiation process like it's a movie scene and people are going in guns ablaze, demanding things or, saying things like, I will never sign a contract that has a non-compete, period. I've also talked to physicians who are unhappy in their job because when they were hired, they were told in their interview that they would take 5 days a call of a month, but that was not specified in their contract. When someone left the team, they were required to pick up more call with no additional pay. The extra call is hurting their productivity in the clinic. Okay, so now they're taking more call and they're actually taking a pay cut because now their income guarantee ended and their salary is largely based on productivity, but because of the extra call that they're taking, they're not getting the productivity. So it's a bad situation. You don't want to be either of these examples. Negotiating your contract in good faith is an understanding that both you and your employer have interests to protect and working together to come to an agreement that's mutually fair. If you're at the contract negotiation phase, you have already invested a lot of time and effort into getting to that point. Multiple interviews, maybe some travel. Likewise, the employer has invested a lot of time and resources to recruit you. So everyone's goal should be to come to an understanding that works for everyone and has everyone protected. Number two, don't be afraid to make the ask. The employer may tell you that the contract is standard and that everyone has the same contract. It may be true that they were issued that way, but I can tell you that 85% of contracts are different in the end than they were when they were issued in the beginning. So it is important that if you have a contract that includes things that are problematic for you, you need to be comfortable asking for the changes with data and reason behind it. That said, you also need to understand that some things are not negotiable, like we talked about. Health benefits typically fall into that category. Next, try to make the ask all at once. You really want to minimize the back and forth emails. It's frustrating for everyone. It drags the process out and just um, adds another way that things could be missed along the way, trying to go back and trace those emails. So the ideal process is to review the document yourself, write down any questions that you have about it, email it and your questions to your attorney. Once you receive it back, draft an email to the employer with all of the items and questions in one document. Minimize that back and forth as much as possible. So, should I hire a lawyer and when? When you get the LOI or when you get the contract? So this is a personal choice. Here is what I would advise. I would definitely advise that you hire a contract review lawyer that specializes in physician contracts, especially if this is your first contract. Words in your contract matter. They can make a huge difference, and you may not know what you need to look for and how that can become problematic down the line. Working with an attorney who's well versed in physician contracts can save you a lot of trouble because they have experience and knowledge of what happens when things are not clearly defined. The next question is when you get the LOI or when you have a contract. Most LOIs are not legally binding. If you sign an LOI, you can still negotiate the items that were listed in the LOI. But as I mentioned earlier, it's bad form to sign the LOI and then end up not moving forward. It's also bad form to sign an LOI agreeing to a dollar amount and then coming back later and asking for a lot more. So as you decide if you want to have a lawyer review your LOI, you need to consider how educated you are on fair market value, compensation models, the benefits and bonuses that you should expect to be offered based on the market you're applying in. A lawyer who specializes in and sees a lot of the physician contracts is likely to have some insight on this and can help you navigate it. If you are planning on consulting a lawyer, you do want to get them the earliest version of the contract. If you start to negotiate on your own and bring in a lawyer 3 months later after you've already requested 10 changes, it hurts your negotiating power and leverage. You don't want the employer to already be frustrated before you seek legal advice. Advice on lawyers, as I mentioned, choose a lawyer that specializes in physician contract negotiation. You don't want a family law lawyer reviewing your contract. You need someone who is familiar with healthcare law, standard clauses found in physician contracts, and someone who will have the background knowledge to help guide you on some of these things. It is best to find a lawyer that offers a flat rate fee. rather than an hourly rate for your contract negotiation. If you are looking for a lawyer, you can always look at your state medical society website. You can reach out within your network. And then another great resource is Resolve. Resolve serves all specialties in all 50 states. We do work with them because we trust them. We know that they're knowledgeable. And so we actually have an agreement that they offer Practice Match physicians a 10% discount using promo code PMWeb10 on their website. And you can also get there from our website. So that's just another resource that we offer to try to help practice match physicians along their way. Speaking of resources, I'd like to end with just a little overview of the different things that Practice Match can do to help you along your career. We have a free CV builder and free CV review. We have scholarships on our website. Some of those are specialty specific, some are open to all specialties. Our job board has over 20,000 positions on it. You can filter those positions based on specialty, location, visa status, PSLF, salary, you name it. Look at those filters. That'll help you take that 20,000 down to exactly what you're looking for. As I mentioned, we have our physician career guidebook that is a free download on our website. It talks about the job search beginning to end and a lot of advice and resources in between. We have our physician immigration handbook that's provided by Sisk and Susser, also a free download on our website. We have career fairs. Some of those are live, some are virtual, some are by region, some are by specialty. So check out the schedule there. We have a promoter program. If you're interested in making some money while you're in training, you can join our Practice Match promoter program and earn money by promoting our events. We also have a lot of educational resources available, webinars on our website. So if you found this educational and you'd like to see some of the other content we offer, you can visit practicematch.com. I am also always available as a resource to answer any questions regarding your career search or any resources that you need. I can be reached at apashard@practicematch.com. Thank you. Have a great day.